My name is Tony Sparks, and this is another episode of Don't Block Me, Block You. In this episode, we're going to talk about Sales.js, and I'm going to teach you guys cool 13 things. And I want to speed this video up, or I'm going to pause it. And the goal for this video is you guys should just see my code, more or less copy duplicated, right? It's some very chill stuff. And then use that for other things. Like in the course that we have this capstone project, and this is definitely meant to help the students in that capstone project. But ultimately, you guys can benefit from this too. This is a quick rundown, dirty version of Sales.js. So we're going to teach how to generate a page on Sales.js. It comes with the CSS and JavaScript. Then we're going to go over controller. And then we're going to talk about posting to the controller. And then we're going to talk about models. And then we're going to talk about this Ajax form, which is a nice component that comes with Sales. And then we're going to talk about, Twitter Bootstrap. It's evolved. And then we're going to talk about looping through things with a Vue.js. Sales comes with a Vue.js in the front end. Very nifty front end tool. And then we are going to talk about the sales component. We're going to create one. And then we're going to talk about click handlers, just how to use that. This cool thing called Socket IO. It's another thing sales comes with. It's good for real-time communication, but then also, communicating with the back end via front end technology. Phone gap type stuff. When you want to do that, this is going to come in. And then we're going to talk about helpers, and then it comes with Stripe. So, I'm going to pause this video. I'm going to jump into the code, and then I'm going to take it from there. All right, cool. So before we start, I just want to bring you guys to the Sales Getting Started page. This is where you go for the instructions to install it. You use npm install, and then you run this command to start a new project. And then you start off with the web app right here. I'm not going to go through the process to take some time, but definitely the instructions are right here. And, definitely do this. Okay, so here is the terminal right here, and I already installed Sales. I ran a command to start my first project, calling this block you landing. And I want to run this command, Sales lift. This is going to start a local Sales server on your machine. Sales uses Express, but at the end of the day, you run this to view the application locally. And so here is the URL it brings it up to. And so the first thing we're going to do is focus on creating a page. And so I'll show you guys how to do this. I have a terminal right here already open. And so it's a very simple command. It Sales generate page. And I want this page to be inside of a tokens folder. So I'm going to make it say tokens / tokens. Okay, so now I have to run these instructions right here. Let's see, I'm gonna take this right here. It wants me to go to the config / routes. So I want to bring that up. And this is literally the process you go through when you're creating a page. So it's in the config folder and this routes folder. Then you come down to the bottom, paste it, save it, and then you have to do this. You come over here to the imports. It's inside of assets. So I'll go back over here. Assets, CSS, importer. This. So that's basically what you do to create a page. I want to show you the page, and then I want to talk about the structure. But this is like meant to be like a quick trial by fire situation. Let's see here. Oh, this is important too. When you do stuff like create this, the last step is to relift essentially. So you stop this, and you run this. And I definitely do want to give you guys a background about cells. And so I'll do that shortly. So I have to log in to view this page I just created. And the URL for it is tokens. Well, actually, let's see. The URL, it says it right here, it's token/tokens, and I want to change that. But that's what generates, or this is what the page gets generated. So I'm going to show you guys the view. I'm going to show you guys the CSS, the JavaScript, and the controller related to this stuff. So in cells, if we look at pages and then to the tokens, this is the CSS for it. Notice the structure of cells. All of the JavaScript and CSS is inside this assets folder. All of the configuration stuff is inside this configs folder. The stuff like for the routes and stuff is there. There's a lot more to it, but we're just gonna stick to this agenda for a quick assessment of how to use cells. And so we're gonna go to the JavaScript inside of the tokens, and here's the JavaScript for that right there. And so every time that you create a page using the generate function or call command, it creates the JavaScript and the assets in these folders. And it's going to follow the same structure of the command that you use in the name. I use token/tokens. That's why I started tokens / the token file right here. So I'm going to pause this. We're going to continue. So the JavaScript was included automatically. The CSS, you saw me import as one of the steps. And we did the routes. We updated that. And this is the controller. The controller for this page is inside of the API/controllers, tokens/view tokens. And this is where you would run certain commands and send information to the front end. For example, I'm going to show you guys this. I'm just going to say tokens equals. I'm going to pause this and do some code. Okay, so here is the tokens controller. I created a tokens object. And I added these 2 tokens right here. And what I also did was I went to the routes, I updated the URL to tokens, so you don't have to go to tokens/tokens. And then I added that URL to the layout. The layout is inside of views, inside the layouts folder, and then inside this layout file right here. This comes with cells by default, and I've added the link to it right here. And then, so aside from that, I also went to the tokens folder or the tokens page right here. That is also in the views under the tokens folder in the tokens file. Let's see here. And so this is the EJS file, the view file that was created once you hit generate page. And it comes with some simple instructions. I'm just going to like pull this page up right here. This is what it looks like on the view side of what I just did. you click this account right here, you see tokens, and then here's the page I created. And then so this is what was created automatically. It shows you where to find the CSS and the JavaScript related to this. And then also the controller, which is very nice. It comes with like the instructions, but I also have the tokens information right here too. And so this comes from the front end, or from the controller specifically, Vue.js. Okay, so this is basically what you do to pass information from the back end to the front end, and it was very simple. All you have to do was just run generate page, then it generated this information. So I am back. I have created some code. The main focus is to talk about posting to a controller. To do that, I created a form. Here's the form right here. It just takes a token name and a description. And this is a Twitter Bootstrap, on the styling side. But let's look at the code for this page. Now, once again, I put a lot of work in this just so you guys kind of like learn quickly and not spend all the time to do this. And so here is the form for this page. I want you to take note up here at the top. I have this new token page, or this new token variable. This is a variable that's being passed in from the controller, and basically it determines if it's a new token or not. And then if it is, then it renders some headers accordingly. But then also I have it right here to control where the form data gets sent. I have an action for create token, and I have an action for update token. All this code you see here, I did not just like create all by myself. I basically branched this from a page that comes with Sales.js. I can show you where that page is. It's inside of views, pages, edit profile. So basically, I grabbed this code, copied and pasted it into a page I generated with a function I showed you guys earlier. And then I added these conditionals right here. There's also conditional right here to control like which button gets shown, one for create token and one for save changes. This page is used for creating the token and updating the token. So yeah, like, scan through here, you guys can see this stuff. A very important thing that I had to do when I did the copy and paste is I had to take the JavaScript and basically duplicate it and then adjust it. So here's the JavaScript for this page. I can show you the JavaScript where it came from. You can go to, it's under account, edit profile, page.js. So here's the JavaScript. This is once again generated by Sales. And so I'm going to just bring it back to here and just go through this JavaScript real quick. So there's this form data that's created automatically. This form data I have set to render data from this token. This token is passed in from the controller. Just to give you guys some background, because I think it's very important. I want to bring up the controller right now. So here is, let me see. No, the controller for this is right here. Under controllers, tokens, view update. So what I do here, and I'm gonna just move this so it's easier to read, is this searches for a token ID, which is a parameter that's passed in through the routes. Specifically, this is what it looks like right here. Let's see, this. So this is when I created this page. I also added this routes right here. It takes the token ID, or goes to token/updates, and then it has the token ID as the last parameter. That's basically a get parameter. It's meant to be dynamic, and it routes to the tokens view update controller, which is basically the controller I was just at. So this is how you pull out the token ID that is the get parameter that is dynamic. You use this request params, and this and then it spits out the token ID. And then basically, whether it's set or not, I create a true or false boolean, and I counsel log this stuff. I highly recommend you guys counsel log everything that you guys do. It definitely helps. I can even show you guys like where the counsel logs show up. And then if there is a token ID, then I get the information. Essentially, this is how you go to find a specific record. The find one is for one specific record, but you can just do find to get like a list of stuff. I definitely recommend you guys pull up the sales documentation, and it kind of pulls up, goes over like the different queries you can do. This is you basically interacting with the model. And so basically, if the token ID isn't set, then like, I just return like an empty object. And so here's the token right here, and then here's a new token, which is basically that true or false Boolean value. And then here's token ID that if it is set, then it's going to get passed. If not, it's just going to pass like undefined. And one thing I want to show you guys is no, this is pretty much cool. This was generated automatically when you hit generate page. I just filled it up and added logic to it to basically make it so the front end over here can read the logic. So if we go, I guess, back to this JavaScript for this page specifically, notice how like I have like this dot token. Automatically, all the things that you pass to the front end is available inside of the this object. You have this before mount, and then it's mounted. Basically, before mount is before the page is basically rendered. Mounted is after the page is fully rendered. These are two different functions that run when every page is loaded, and they're ran accordingly. Before mount and once it's actually mounted. And then here you have some methods right here. The submitted form and then the handle parsing form. These are two functions that came from edit profile. And they're necessary in this Ajax form component. So notice this right here. So one thing that's cool about Sales is it comes with a component, Ajax form component. And it's for like submitting information to the backend using Ajax. And it takes a couple parameters. For one is like the submitted form, and the other one is the handle parsing. Handle parsing basically validates to make sure there's no errors. And then submitted form, basically once the form is submitted, it handles that. And then you have like this cloud error, and then the syncing object. These are things like, once again, I did not like write fully myself, but basically copied and pasted. But here is the Ajax form component. Now, honestly, at some point, I want to customize this. I think there's like a lot of ways that it can be customized, specifically submitting files. But like for now, you guys don't really have to go too in depth into it. If you ever want to customize it yourself, it is inside of the assets JS folder components, and it's right here. But for the sake of just moving forward, like we can just use it as it is. And so one thing I want you guys to take note is this action right here, create token. So this is the action that that was generated by the Cloud SDK. So this is like a good segue to talking about the actual action that's responsible for handling the information from this form. What I did was I ran another sales command, sales generate, and specifically it is, let me just hit clear for you guys. Sales generate action. I want to say update token. Just want to make sure that I'm follow suit. Here's the other action I created. It is tokens. Yep, create token. And then I just want to do this. Tokens. All right, cool. So cells generate action, update token. So I ran this previously for create token, and here is the results that came out. Essentially, it gives you these things you have to do, these instructions. One of them is taking this information right here and adding it to the routes. So I'm gonna look right here. And then I just add this. All right, cool. So, I used the phrase update and it went ahead and created this. I'm just gonna double check. Yeah, and it's inside the tokens folder too. And still. But like that's the specific URL. And like ultimately the URL doesn't super duper matter. If you were doing this for API, this is the URL you would give, like this endpoint right here. But here's what's cool is that the second step of this is I have to run this command, run rebuild cloud SDK. And that's going to generate an action that we can then paste into the form, the Ajax form. So I did this. And then so this may be a good time to just, look at the documentation because it does bring it up here. So Cells has two types of controllers. One is like an action, like the one we just created. Another one is a controller. I use that, or I created that recently. I don't use it too often, but I do think it could be like a very useful tool. But yeah, definitely check this stuff out, and check out this documentation at your own leisure. It definitely help. And so I'm going to hit cells lift. That's the last thing I have to do. Well, actually, one more other thing I'll do is I'll make sure, go to this Cloud SDK. So it is inside of JavaScript, inside of Cloud Setup. And let's see here. I'm just going to do a search for update token. All right, so this was created. And then you can copy this and then go to the form, and it's basically already there because I predicted the name, but that's basically what you would do. I did this for create token, but I went through the process to kind of show you guys what it looks like. So all that being said, I think we're about ready to actually submit the form. So let's try that. So I want to hit test. Oh, actually, before I do this, I want to show you guys something else. Before I ran the Cloud SDK, I also did this. So let's go to the action I created previously. Notice the inputs. It came with inputs empty, as it did right here. And I'm just going to replace it with this. And here is like the logic you will put for this action or this controller. Basically the same thing. Action is just a specific controller. And then here is the information that I basically did right here. Essentially, I take this information, I console log it, and then I run the inputs into create token. And then this creates a token. It also fetches it because I added that right there, that fetch function. And then it creates a token and it just returns it. Okay. So I hit create. And then it redirects to this page right here. So we'll definitely go over like how I got to this point, but I definitely want to show you guys that the information got posted. And what's even better is I can show you guys the console logs related to it. This right here. Create token, took the name, description, took the inputs right there, and then it created the token. Here's the token information, and then it redirected me to this page, and we can go over specifically this right here. So if I comment out this right here, this specific line, it wouldn't redirect, and it can show you like that the data got submitted. Here's the data from the submission. I can just show you guys that real quick. But yeah, and also check out this handle parsing form right here. We're not going to go through it too much. You guys can check it out. But long story short, it checks to see if all the information from the form data, which is this object right here, was submitted. Okay. But let's want to relift this. So test two, and create. Then I'm gonna check this council log. Here are some council logs that I had. It says update token submitted form data. And then here's the data that I had submitted from the action. That is right here. Cool. So basically, I just showed you guys how to submit a form. I want to also show you guys like some more about this form information. So one thing that's cool is like these error validations that I basically got from the edit profile. Essentially, as long as you make sure the form data is supplied for this, it can render the form data for you when you go to update it, but then also it can validate if it's correct or not. So I'm going to show you guys some of that in action. First thing I'll do is I'll go back to tokens. I'll go to create token, and I'm going to go to hit create. And because it used the handle parsing and it determined that I didn't have any of this information, it showed that those errors. And basically that's like this class showing up. And this class is showing up because of right here in handle parsing. It was like, if this is not set, basically set the error to true. And then it was like, you know, it's listening for the error to being true over here. And that's why it says like, you know, full name right here. We just say token name. And then watch, what's cool is that you can instantly update that. Cool. So yeah, definitely, you know, look at the code, like ask me if you have any questions. You know, I'm down to talk, you know, block you, university.io, don't block me, block you, you know, join the class. But other than that, like this is, you know, basically the rundown of how to post and use the Ajax form. All right, so let's talk about the edit process. If you go over here, there's one thing I wanted to make sure you guys understood. There's some things that I definitely have to do. Inside of this update token action I created, I added this logic. I added the inputs right here, and then I added the logic right here to update a token. Take note of how to do it right here. You need to update function, pass in the where query essentially, and then you set the inputs or the data that you want to update. And so when I did this, basically I had to recompile the Cloud SDK, which I did, and I can show you that right here. And then basically it changed the URL from like a patch to a post, which makes a lot more sense. It's a lot more what I expected. Here's the URL, and even here's like the information that it accepts right here. But to show you what the routes look like after I did it, this is what it looks like. And so another thing that I did was I added this input for the token ID. And essentially, if a token was set, it would be passed in through via this token ID property I added to the form data. And once again, this is token information that gets passed in if the token is created, and that happens via the view update controller. See here as I get the token information based off of the parameter, the get parameter I showed you earlier. And so just to show you guys this in action, I can go back to the tokens page and we can edit this right here. Maybe just say, right, and then just say this. And then boom, here's update information, right? So a nice little quick flow, and that's cool, right? So I want to show you guys the models, right? So there's a token model that is allowing for this data to be stored. Here is a test model, very little information right here. It shows the name, description. These are different like properties. You have to define the properties, say what type it is, add a description, add an example. I did that for both this and that. Here's association. Basically, this links this token to a user. User ID right here. So this is like a good segue into like the documentation for sales, because it definitely do more justice than I can in regards to explaining the dynamic nature of the models. So yeah, definitely check out this information. Like some of the coolest things I feel like I can explain more or less quickly is the has many. And like, I'm not going to front, the way that I usually find it is I just do this, right? Sales has many. So this is basically in regards to the sales ORM. It shows you how to basically link different models together. In this example, they have pets, and every pet or every owner, this is the user model right here, has pets. And every pet has an owner. And this is basically how you associate it. This will be very similar, like this right here, pets, this collection, it'll be similar to something that goes under the embeds. And then association will be something that kind of goes, it's like the owner for right here, and when it go like right here. Here is a more extensive like model I've created, just more information and stuff, but the overall workings of it is very like similar to this. And like I said, definitely go to like sales, Google like sales has many, and check out all the different associations, because it's very powerful in that way. And it definitely reduces the need for relational database tables. Like in the background is creating it, but you don't have to do it physically, which saves you some time, which is the value of a framework. Also take note of the populate function of models. Essentially, in the last example that they had on documentation, if an owner had multiple pets, the way that you would get all the pets is you would use this populate function right here. So in this situation, there I have orders, and there's like buyers and sellers. And basically, it would just get a collection of buyers and sellers. In this example, I'm assuming they're probably both like user objects and stuff, but this is definitely another powerful feature that I use of sales. And literally, like, let's just say inside of, let's say, if we go to update token, this right here, when it gets to token right here, or let's say specifically, it's the view update. This is where you would add like a populate. Like if I had like, if I had pets for a token, that's how you would populate that. And basically it'd be an array of tokens, or array of pets for every token that's returned. All right, so let's talk about Vue.js loops. All right, so as you see right here, here's a list of tokens. They're not; these are all actually different tokens. They just have similar names. But essentially, what I did to show this, I didn't like write a specific HTML for every token you see here. What I did was I passed through an array of tokens to the front end, and then I looped over it. So I want to show you how that works real quick. So here is the Vue tokens controller. It was created once I ran the generate token or generate page command. And what I did was I added this find query. Notice how it uses await too. Like in cells, it definitely uses a lot of asynchronous functions. So you want to make sure you have the async in front of all your functions, and then you want to make sure you use await when you do calls to the database. So this is a call to find all the tokens to the database. There is no filter, so it gets all the tokens. And then it gets the information right here and passes it to the front end. And then here we see the information. Originally, it looked like this, where I just had that right there. But what I did was, now here's where the view and the looping comes in. I have a V-4, and basically it's like a for loop. It says for token in tokens. And then notice how I have like this class right here, row. Basically, you can add other attributes to this div if you want to. But the important thing is everything inside of this div, it now has access to this token object. And like I then echo out the name and the description. And then I also have a link to the edit update page. And take note that I have this semicolon right here before the href. That basically signifies to Vue.js that it's going to have some backend code to parse through before it renders it out. And so that's how this works. And notice also how like there's the string right here is in quotes. And then I hit plus, and then I add the token.id property, and that's outside of quotes. Okay. So this is basically all you need for like looping. This is the value of Vue.js. The value of cells come with Vue.js. And this, to show you what this looks like right here, I can just do this and just show you that like there is, let's see here, I'm gonna hit save. There's like a JSON object right here with all the data. So we can get rid of that for now. So that is looping. And so next I want to talk about components. And we can talk about like creating our own component, very similar to the Ajax component, where we can take this looping code and put it inside of there too. So I created a component. I took what was here and I basically transformed it into a component. Where the code is specifically is inside of assets, JavaScript components. I created a folder called tokens, and I created a component called tokens list. I followed the convention that I see here in other components, where it's the token or the component name dot component dot JS. And then I just took the names right here. One thing is important is like, I'm not sure this is exactly necessary, but I keep that commenting there. So I know what it looks like on the front end when I want to call this component. Notice how it says tokens dash list here. It's just tokens dash list right here too. And also notice how I'm passing in this attribute. Notice the semicolons. I'm passing through the list of tokens that the front end passes. The controller passes to the front end. And notice this property right here, tokens. And so this property right here is then immediately available right here under this template. Notice how I have this parent div that holds all the code. You're going to need one parent div that holds all the code. But then like everything else is basically the same, where you have the V-4 and then it loops through the tokens. This function right here isn't necessary. And like, if you guys ever want, you can add methods to this too. It follows the convention very similar to the JavaScript of the pages, the before mount, and then you can add a mounted function here too. It doesn't come with it. And then, before destroy, if you ever have to destroy it. But like, the main important thing is that, like, I just took the front end looping code, I just pasted it right here inside of this template, and I passed the data in with the prompts right here. Definitely take note of this component register name that I passed in right here. I think that's really what matters. You don't want to have two components with the same name. And then I also want you guys to take note that inside of components, you can call other components, which is what I did right here. Cells comes with this nice timestamp component. It takes the created at timestamp that is added to all models by default, which is cool. Created at and updated at, and also ID are all created by default for all the models. And that's basically it right there. And then so this is what it looks like on the front end right here. Very similar code, but here is what that specific component looks like right there. So yeah, that's how components work. And you can definitely do this with any other thing that you want. This is just a template. Definitely just take note of the code and how it works. I got this. The first component I duplicated was the timestamp component. But after that, I just kind of use this as a blueprint to do my own stuff. And you can too. Here's a nice blueprint for you. Very simple and easy. So now we're going to talk about socket.io and click handlers with the components. The way the click handler is going to work in the components are the same way they will work in other JavaScript, but I did it inside of components to show how cool components are and how compartmentalized you can make Cells.js and things you do. So what we did was I added a pay now button to every token. And the way it works is inside of the templates, I added a pay button. I also added this hidden attribute called token ID. And then here is the methods. I added this bind UI actions, and I have it so it's called on mounted. I have a suspicion it'll work in before mount, but the way I just did it, I just added a mounted. And notice how it's this is how you call it. Like, all the methods are automatically put into the this object, but inside of it, the methods, I like to reference the this object and put it to a variable in case I want to call it inside of another function, like I do in this pay function. So bind UI actions basically calls this function. This function adds a click handler to the pay button. And also notice right here, I have this ID. I added a property ID, and it gets passed in right here. I do that because if this component was ever needed in multiple places on the same page, you definitely need a way for your click handlers to know which component is referencing. So I added an ID right here, and it's showing up. It's right here where it gets passed in props, but then also right here. Notice the semicolons right here because it is a backend object. So I added to the pay click handler. It activates the button. I council log some stuff. This is just like for me to make sure that the things I'm looking for inside the JavaScript, like the token and then the token ID inside the token exists. I would say this is necessary, like in regards to when you're developing, always council log stuff, like every single line to some degree, because it really just helps like what define where your code is and what reality you're in as you're writing code. Like sometimes shit can get crazy if you don't council log stuff. I'll just say that much, right? And then so I get this token ID, and then here's a token ID right here. Then I pass it to this other function, pay token, and it takes the ID, and then I created this class called CSRF. All it really does is, and this is actually a good segue into sales dependencies. I wanted to make sure that this class was accessible to every JavaScript script that I have, this project. So I'll put it inside of dependencies. Here's the actual object. It basically is an object that has different functions. The most important thing is it gets this CSRF token. And that's useful for making sure that your browser isn't hacked. It's like a security feature Sales comes with. And it basically makes it so every request has to have a token. And specifically, it's the post puts all the requests that aren't GET tokens. And so another thing I did to make sure this works is I added this line of code, this routes right here. This is security / grant CSRF token. That's something Sales comes with. I didn't have to write that helper or the controller for that. It already knows what's going on. And basically, it returns back a token. And so I just wrote this piece of code right here just to get that token. And I use this inside of this component. And like when you go to do like phone gap stuff and turn like your sales projects into apps, this is something that's definitely going to come in handy because you have to send requests. You have to send it via Ajax a lot of times. And in order for Ajax requests to work with sales, it has to have this token when you're doing stuff like put and post. And it also brings me down to and this is actually how you use this token. So once you have the token and it gets submitted, then you have to include it inside of the header. So here's a request for header right here, and here is the request. And notice how I'm using IO dot socket. That is something that Sales comes with. It is a socket.io. It's useful for doing the Ajax calls like I talked about, specifically also in phone gap. And then it also is useful for like real-time communication. I'm not going to cover that here. I don't think it's completely necessary for like what we're doing in the scope of the capstone stuff. I mean, honestly, it kind of is, but like, right now we're just going to focus on the posting. And so here is a URL. This URL was generated when I clicked or when I entered in the command for generating a new action. And so here's the action right here. It was the action pay token. I created the action and it is right inside of the API controllers, token, pay token. And so right now, I just have it returning, basically some dummy data just to make sure that the posting is working. I console log the token ID, the inputs, and I return a payment object and a success true. And essentially, what happens is this command is ran to this URL. It's a post method to this URL. I take in the token ID as a data. That's the only thing I need. And I make sure I supply the API request headers. And then the information that's returned is basically the result. There's an error come right here and also console logs the status code. And so we can see this in action if I just do this. So I'm going to bring up the console log. That's this right here. I'm just going to click pay. And so here are all the logs that I just had previously, the token and whatnot. And then here's the result. And yeah, so that's basically it in regards to posting using sales.io. And like I said, I'm going to pull up the documentation. Sales.io, let's say real time. And it's definitely like cool stuff. Like I think that you guys can, more or less handle just like reviewing this documentation. It definitely comes with like tutorials and kind of like explaining how to do this. But when it comes to real-time stuff, like let's say you had a messaging app, like that's definitely when this comes in handy, and like it's very straightforward. So let's see here. So we went over click handlers with the components. Like I said, this works with other JavaScript. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to prepare uh, the actual charging of the payment, and I'm going to show you guys how to use Stripe and helpers with Sales.js. Stripe is a payment processing API. Helpers and Sales is just some code that allows you to compartmentalize your code and then make it more cleaner as you run it. And it's basically useful for just having like a whole bunch of algorithms in one place, so you don't have to have it everywhere. It's really good for refactoring your code. So when we look at the pay token, I want to just comment out some of this code. I want you guys to take note that Sales comes with integration for Stripe inside of the custom configuration. Inside of the config folder, there is a custom.js. And specifically, you can enter in like your sales information. This is just dummy data right here. But like you can enter standard stuff like your emails, base URL, stuff like that. This is a lot of this stuff is pre-configured, and if you want to use billing, then basically you have to enable this stuff right here. So one thing that's also cool is when you generate a sales project with a web app, it comes with like a nice little settings page for your account. This is basically the page. And you can do stuff like edit your profile. This is the form that I copied to create the token. And also, this is where you go to add a card. So I'm going to add my sales test information, and then basically the API keys necessary for Stripe to work. And then add card field should show up over here. And once that's added, I can show you guys the test data or whatever. But then the ultimate goal is to fulfill the actual Stripe charge and then associate it with the token. And then we're basically done. So I added the Stripe information. I'm going to click the add card. And here is the test information. It's just 4242. And then basically you put in any valid date, and then the 111 works for that. And then boom. So now in the back end, I have linked this account with a card, and there's a customer ID that is now set and added in the database. Sales did a lot of that for us. And now I can charge this account. Okay, so I created the component. I added the Stripe stuff. And so this is what it looks like. Here's pay token. And basically, the amount always is going to be $10. The way Stripe works is you have to charge the amount by 100, and then replace the decimal with an empty string. Basically, they don't do decimals essentially. So, but they still expect you to have the 2 decimal places. So that's why you go through this math. But essentially, I created this charge amount, and it's also a string too. You should know that. And then I call the Stripe object that basically gets created. All you have to do is require Stripe. This stuff comes with that stuff. And then here's a charge object. Accounts logger right here. I create a payment object right here. And this becomes the initial information for the payment object I'm going to insert into the modal or insert into the database via the payment modal. And I can show you that real quick. Very simple. It has a Stripe ID, it has a total charge, as a receipt, which is basically the whole entire charge object stored in a JSON. Notice how you can store JSONs inside of the database with this type right here. Here's number, here's string, basically all the types. And then I also have this association right here that associates it with the token ID. And then I also have added the payments object. It's basically a collection to the embed section of the token modal. And notice how it's a collection of the payment modal. Notice how it's lowercase p right here, and it's via the token ID. So if you go to the Stripe, or I'm sorry, the Sales.js documentation, you will see this. This is a situation of one to many, right? But you can do many to many, and so on and so forth. But all that is definitely documented in there. So if we go back to the code, what I do is once I create the payment object, I fetch it, return it to this object right here. I console log it, but then I also add it to the collection of payments for this token ID. And so this does the relational database stuff for you. Essentially, it takes the ID of this payments and adds it to the token, and it adds it via the relational database table Sales creates for you. So that's basically all you have to do to associate a payment with a token. And that's why in the front end, I have this, every token has like the payments under it. And so, here's the code for that. Essentially, let me definitely show you the view tokens. So that's this right here. Notice how I added the populates function to the find function. And then let's see here. So yep, there's that's how you basically populate stuff that you add to a collection, and it's very powerful, simple stuff. So what are we doing next? I want to just make sure you guys see this code component list. All right, and so essentially every token, it basically has payments populated with it, and this is an array. And basically, I loop through this array very similar to the way I loop through tokens. It's kind of a loop inside of a loop in this situation. And then that's what produces the Stripe ID and then the total charge showing up right here. And that's what this information is right here. And so the last and final thing I'm going to do, right, for this tutorial is I'm just going to show you how you can easily take this code and integrate a Twitter Bootstrap component in it. This looks kind of shitty to me, and I don't like it. But what I want to do is I want to add an accordion to it. Here's the code for accordion right here. This is what it does, right? And I'm just basically going to take the code right here and adjust it so it can create an accordion inside of a for loop for me. All right, so I did it. I converted this into an accordion. I use this right here. I'll show you the code right now. Here you go. Very simple stuff. All went down in the template. One thing I want to make sure you guys are definitely aware of is that I had to definitely update the target data, all the different triggers that Twitter Bootstrap needs for this stuff to work. I put semicolons in front of things like IDs and the attributes. And then I added some unique values like the token ID to the string that was inside of the attribute. And then I also added quotes too. So definitely take note everywhere you see a semicolon. You can compare before and after what it looks like. But just be aware that that's when you guys do stuff like that, using components, using for loops and stuff like that, you definitely have to use the semicolons if you're going to be using back-end data, to create this component or the components. And that's basically it. So I'm going to summarize this, but yeah, the code's right here. I also made it so you can see it right here at the bottom. Once a charge has been created, I just change direction or redirect to the token page. So here's an example. Click that. Page gets reloaded. Now that's there. All right. So it's very cool. This is basically definitely the basic things you guys need to know for creating, Celsius projects. And yeah, with that, I will lead you in a summary and we'll end this. Yeah, so in summary, I went over 13 things. There was the sales generate page. That is a command you guys ran in the terminal. I went over the CSS, where that is and how to import it. And then the JavaScript, where that is and how to add to it. And then the controller, specifically the action controller. And then I went over posting to the controller, and then the Ajax form that's also useful in doing that. That's a component. I went over how to loop through stuff using Vue.js. And then I went over components and how to create one. And then I also showed you guys how to add click handlers to components and also JavaScript. And then there was the socket IO calls, the request, post requests, and stuff like that. And then we also, so there's also helpers. Let me just show you that before I conclude this video. But we also went over Stripe. So give me 1 second before we conclude this. So the helpers are actually very straightforward and very simple. It starts off by running this command cells, generate helpers, or I'll just say helper. And then I want this helper to be inside of a tokens folder. So I'm gonna say token slash, and this is going to be, I want this to maybe Stripe. Let's just make it a Stripe helper slash charge. Right, very straightforward. Let me see. It says helper cells generate. It says theming. No. Let's try this. All right, give me 1 second. All right, cool. I got it to work. I think it was just a spelling error, but this is the command I ran: cells generate helper slash stripe charge, or slash stripe slash charge. Right. I ran it again. It was like something already exists there. But this is what happened. So it got created in this path right here, and then this is how you would call it. And if you add some parameters, you would call it that way too. So I'm going to basically show you guys how to use this. First, let's go over here to API, helpers, then we have Stripe, and we have this. So basically, this is what it produces, and it's very similar to one of the action controllers. And so that being said, this is the pure magic of this, and I can definitely show you guys how to do this quickly. So you want to go to pay token, right? Here is some information here, and we don't want to go through the whole entire, like the goal is we want to take this whole entire code right here and just put it inside the helpers. So first thing I'm going to do, let's just grab this. Take it, and then I'm going to drop it inside of the charge. So boom, I'll just paste that in there. And then so there's some inputs that this need. One of them is going to be this ID. So let's just go over here and take some of these inputs. And we're just going to put it right here. So give me 1 second. All right, cool. So I did it. This is what it looks like. Essentially, it's way cleaner code for this controller. And all of the heavy lifting is done inside of the helpers. I pass in the token ID, the Stripe customer ID, and then amount. And then this is what it looks like. It takes the inputs. It initiates the inputs right here at the top. And then it has the Stripe API object that it gets, basically the same code, right? And then it returns this payment. And then, returns the payment dumps it out right here, then returns it to the front end. And then just to show you this still works, I can do this. And like honestly, on a nice little bonus lesson, one thing that I think is great is like the scripts of cells. I ran this command cells generate script stripe test, and then it spits out this instructions right here, and then it generates the script. It's inside of the scripts folder. So I use the scripts to test stuff. So let's say I created this helper. I want to make sure that it works. Essentially, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run some code into here. I want to console log some stuff. And give me 1 second, I'll show you. But also look at this right here. Before we get too far, one of the cool things is the scripts, when you generate it, it comes with a nice command on how to test it out immediately. Boom shakalaka, right? Boom shakalaka. All right, so let's do this. And then I'm going to, just for 1 second, I'm going to show you, can call a helper inside of your scripts. So let's do this. All right, so let's look at the script. Basically, I just went and grabbed some information. I got users, I just returned the first user that's showed up out of the array. I set the user equal to me, then I got their Stripe ID. I hard-coded the Stripe, the token ID, and then the amount. And I just pass it into the helper, and then it returns this payment. And then I'm gonna run it right here. And it's going to return some information. And like I said, this is definitely like a great way to test your code before you go too in depth in it. Create a script, create some helpers. Basically, if you have a script that works with helpers, then you just copy and paste that code into any controller that you need, and it does some perfect backend code for you. And so here's the information. It just dumped out. And yeah. So thank you guys so much for your time. This has been a very interesting tutorial. I think that overall, we went over some very basic stuff. And you know, one thing I want to leave you guys with is, like, I've been developing from the Cells disk, which is like a database that comes with Cells, and other tutorials and stuff. We can definitely talk about like how to link your Cells application with a MySQL database or a MongoDB database. I really like MongoDB because it allows your database models to be dynamic. And that's helpful for like things that change over time. But once again, that could be something in a different episode. And thank you so much for your time. Once again, don't block me, block you. My name is Tony Sparks, and this is Block University. Thank you.